to read the question.
Oh, yes, first one's, yes, first questions come from our hosts, actually. The golf and tourism industry questions, and I'm going to read these questions. Okay. Overton Power District Candidates, and each one of you will answer these, please. As you are aware, many Mesquite businesses, both large and small, over the last few years have struggled financially to stay solvent. With this in mind, should utility companies such as Overton Power raise rates, taxes at this time or in the near future? And how do you feel on the increase would impact already struggling Mesquite community businesses? Mr. Baldwin.
I've been attending the meetings for quite some time at OPD, and previous to the last rate increase, I urged the board on several different occasions, public hearings, to please implement a 10% operations reduction before they raise the rates. And I think much of Mesquite and the whole area has gone through an economic turndown. You've seen the water company, you've seen the city do a lot of belt tightening that OPD never did. They continued on the same path that they always have, giving people raises, endowing their general manager with special privileges before he retired, so his PERS would be increased. And these practices were paid for by everybody that got a power bill. So what we have to do is we have to have management to control it. So the first thing we have to do is get control of the budget. We have to implement a top to bottom review of cost and operations, and we have to implement reductions in those operational costs. That will stabilize the rates, stabilize the operational cost for OPD, thus stabilizing the possibility of future rate increases. One of the things, if you look at the model of power delivered, the commercial is paying a much higher portion comparative to somebody like Nevada Power than residential is. So we need to tie these rates, tie the operations down, get it financially stable, hold the rates for residential, and anything that we can save, give to commercial, so these people can move their businesses ahead and work toward expanding and bringing in more jobs.
Yeah, I agree with most of what Mr. Baldwin said as far as we got to look at the company as a whole before going out to the ratepayers and raising rates. One of the reasons I chose to run is I see lots of opportunity that in ways that the board itself can help management change current policies and practices to be more efficient in what they do and also be more effective. One of those is their budget and the way that they present their budget, the way that they manage the budget. There's lots of ways that from a business standpoint that I think things can be ran a lot smoother and more efficient before just going to the ratepayers and asking for basically a decrease in pay.
Hi everybody. Cost and rates are really important. We need to keep the rates as low as possible. I think what we really need is to investigate all of these situations that have been mentioned without drawing any conclusions before having a thorough investigation to see if our pay is fair or whether it's too high, to see if we need all the people we have and things like that. What we need is a more active board. The problem is that when the general manager brings a recommendation to the board gets out their rubber stamps and goes boom, and there's almost no discussion on any issue, with rare exceptions. The board needs to be interactive. The board needs to give the general manager direction. So if I see something that I need to be done, then I will collaborate with the rest of the board and try to give the general manager direction as to what studies the company should make, the district should make, under the general manager's lead. And then I will insist that the general manager come back with all the facts, both sides of an issue, the factors that in favor of what he wants to do and the other things against it, but all the data. If he doesn't come back with all the data, I'm not going to support him. It can wait until all the data is in. And then the board has to take the responsibility to make the tough decisions. And if we all collaborate together, everyone would be happy. Because if the manager knows he's going to be thoroughly reviewed, the manager will come back with the right recommendations, almost all the time. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Wolf Creek for inviting me to this. Being down in Overton, sometimes we don't get up this way for things, but I have a few things. I do agree with Mr. Hurd here that we do need to have our board be more interactive with OPD. There needs to be more dialogue between them about the things that are going on. One thing that I can't say, I agree that I would like commercial rates to get an adjustment because I am a business owner and my OPD bill is ridiculous during the summer because of air conditioning, of course. But I also feel that the economy turn down that we've had, it affects the residents also. It doesn't just affect us commercially. We may feel it more, but everybody in the community has felt those changes. So to think that just commercial needs help, I don't know that if I can go there, because I feel that the residents have the same problems, the elderly have the same problems. That's pretty much how I feel about it.
Yes, my name. Yeah, my name is Jim Pugh, and I think I'm the only incumbent of the candidates up here right now. And I agree with what all the other candidates have said, and I've actually attempted to do that in my term that I've served so far. I actually replaced a resignee that resigned from the board, and I took his place for the last year and a half, 2 years. From expenditure standpoint, I do question anything that actually is proposed by the staff. And if there isn't a way to pay for it without increasing rates, I turn it down. We've actually eliminated some positions in OPD that have saved quite a bit of money over the last year. And anything that comes to us that will increase spending, I object to it. Now, I'm only one of 7, so my objection might not carry much weight. The two critical things I see with OPD, and we actually discussed this earlier at board meeting, is reliability of our system. There's a 230 kV line that feeds the entire OPD system from Reed Gardner Generating Station down in Moapa. We need to get an alternate feed into the system, so if we do lose our line like we did here a few weeks ago, we have an alternate to back up and keep the power on.
Said earlier, my name is Mike Young, and the reason I'm running is because of the rates. I go to the board meetings and I see the board members 7-0 every single vote. Now, Jim mentioned he objected to some, I perhaps was not at those meetings. But every time I go to the meetings, I see the board unanimous in every item. Almost no discussion of anything. If you're going to get the rates down, you have to control costs. And the board's job is oversight of management, oversight of the general manager, and setting policies that will ensure that will happen. One of the big problems with the power district is that they have a tremendous debt, $52 million. The interest payment alone on that is $3 million a year, at 6%, most of it, 6%. We brought that up at a meeting, and I was told, we're happy with our lender and we're happy with people we do business with. I don't know about you, but if my house was financed at 6%, I'd sure be looking around for a little adjustment. Yes, there's a penalty if you pay it off perhaps early, but if we could get that rate down around 4 or 3, think of the savings. And that savings could go into paying off the debt, and then if power costs increase, to hold the rate stable and use that money to help keep the rates lower for the customer. That hasn't been done. I mean, the current board doesn't do the things I've heard. And that's what we're all about, is that there needs to be some changes. They have flown under the radar for years and years. So it's time to make a change there, and I hope you'll consider it.
Thank you very much, candidates. At this point, we're going to turn over the questions to the press. I believe we will start with Mike down on the end. And again, it'll be 2 minutes on each question. And applaud everybody for following the clock so quickly on this. And again, there will be no debates between one another or rebuttals to the questions. So the same format you just used will be used continually. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. All of you, or some of you, have come up and said, "Ask me the hard ones." So I hope I can help. We're going down these from Dave down, and so my first question is for you, Dave. You've had a very contentious relationship with the OPD during the public comments periods of their meetings. In April, you were even threatened with being removed by Larry Moses, the chairman. Many of the current board members will still be there after this election. With such a rocky relationship, how do you propose to effect changes or work compatibly with them if elected?
The only thing I've done when I've gone to these board meetings is pointed out the obvious failings of the board. They continually pass things without discussion. They do not release enough information. So that is where the contention comes in when they deny that. And all I'm trying to do is find it. I have a 3-minute at the beginning, a 3-minute at the end to try to get that information. So I've been sometimes fairly aggressive at getting that. I can work with other people. If there's certain things that are right and wrong, and especially when it comes to releasing information to the public and how they run the meetings, letting the public have more input on individual line items, listening to what the public has to say at these meetings. I go to the meetings, and it's kind of a frustration to me because I spend the time to go to the meetings, but all you do is you do your 3 minutes beginning and 3 minutes at the end. During the meeting, they don't answer your questions. All they do is take pot shots at what you said in the opening comments. So, but to answer your question directly, I think I can work with the people. If not, we'll have to come up with a group that can move the OPD ahead. I think the problem with some of the people that are there that have been very aggressive toward me are due to the fact they don't want changes. And we have to have changes. We have to bring it into this to the current history, and we've got to get the accounting under control. We have to get all the other controls needed there, release the public information, and if the people that are there, that remain there, that are the old people, that contention, we're going to have to find a way to bring along a majority group so we can make these changes. If they're going to stand in the way, I think the public will see that, and the next election you'll have to vote those people out also. Thank you.
Just one interjection. If we seem to be out of order somewhere along the evening as this goes along, both Mr. Williams and Ms. Frainer may not be asking questions from certain people as they come up because of close personal relationships with those individuals. Just so you're aware of that fact.
Mr. Hughes, you've been here for 24 years. You've grown up here, rather.
I wish I was only 24 still.
Me too. Some citizens in Mesquite have a concern about potential nepotism at OPD. The good old boys. Are you or your wife related to anybody currently with OPD? And if so, who are they? Or would you recuse yourself if it came to relating with an issue that had to do with them? And do you think that this perceived nepotism is a problem?
Well, I believe that I can be honest in the decisions that I'm going to be faced with and that I can make as an open-minded person. The relationships that I have are more associated by last name. Anybody that knows any of the history of the Valley, Hughes, Jensen, Levitt, it's a big name. So the two that are currently employed by OPD that that have the same last name as Bruce used, which I can't even tell you how far back we're related, but it's a ways back. The closest one would be Mads Hughes. His dad and my dad were first cousins, so we'd be second cousins. You know, when you grow up in a small community like this all your life, no matter what position you're running for, you're going to be related to somebody, whether it be somebody that's opposing you or whether it be somebody that's employed there. My desire to run is not to try to play favoritism to anybody that has the same last name. Or, I mean, for that matter, I have closer relationships with people that I know on a personal basis that work there than I do people that are actually related to me. So I don't think the nepotism is going to come into play. Well, I know it's not. I'm for change, as we've discussed here. There's definitely opportunities for change there. The main reason I'm running is because I feel like there is no public information that gets back to the organization. I like to think of boards as check and balances on management. That has not been done. I believe that the board and the staff at OPD inform each other, but the public's information or the public's desires or questions don't ever get answered. They're not represented in a way. Thank you.
Mr. Hurd, you have brought up the issue of salary inequity at OPD in public comments. If elected to the board, what would you propose to assure that employees are paid fairly for their services?
Thank you. I would propose that the salaries be compared with the salaries for similar positions at other rural utilities and at other companies around Mesquite that are similar sized companies, and try to fairly assess whether the salaries are fair and appropriate. And I don't prejudge that they're too high. I don't prejudge anything without getting all the facts. Now, in judging the salaries, you also have to take into account the complete fringe benefit packages, which are very good at OPD. And I don't know how that compares throughout the industry. So I'm not preconceived, and you know, if the salaries are too high, I would think they would have to be lesser raises for a number of years to bring them in line with what the community should be. I don't think you would be going out and actually cutting salaries. You would lose a lot of your good people. Thank you.
Welcome to Mesquite, Judy.
Thank you.
I would like to hear where you stand on the cheapest widespread renewable energy source, which is wind power. I know you've done a great job in Malapa Valley as on the town board down there, but what experience and how do you feel about wind power?
I have to be honest, I don't have a lot of information on wind power. What I do have is from living in California prior to coming here, and friends that lived in the Palm Springs area and their disappointment with the way it looked, the sound, and nobody there seemed to be happy with it that was in the area where it was. I can't honestly say that I would know. I'm more prone to solar power. Wind power to me doesn't seem acceptable in this area because of the fluctuation of the winds. We don't have a steady wind. We have wind or we have no wind. It doesn't seem like it would be a steady source.
All right, Mr. Pugh. Many areas in southern Nevada are experiencing significant growth in employment and prosperity because they have attracted the solar energy projects. The Virgin Valley has so far been left behind. As a current OPD board member, do you think OPD has made a responsible effort to attract such a project to the Virgin Valley? If not, then why? And if so, what would you propose?
Yes, we did consider a major solar project here about a year ago. We actually had a company come in and want to build a 40 megawatt solar facility on Mormon Mesa, which is the mesa just outside Mesquite. The problem was we had to sign a power purchase agreement for 30 years with the company and co-sign for the $100 million loan to build the facility. And what they would put in would be today's technology, and technology is going to change over the next 30 years. So based on that, mainly because of the co-signing for the loan, we turned it down. Solar power, as I mentioned in a previous forum, is good, but it still requires base generation to back it up. The solar goes away at night, you don't have the power, so you still have to have base generation from gas or some other fuel. And that we're considering now on our board with small gas generators, which will supplement our existing supply, which now comes from Arizona Public Service through the NV Energy system. And I do support the solar, but it economically is not really that feasible. It still has to be subsidized by the government. If you have to provide the money fully from the company, you can't do it. You have to have those subsidies, and they're eventually going to go away.
It's my turn finally. Mr. Young, kind of a similar
Projects were not embraced by OPD, and do you support OPD buying any energy from renewable providers?
I don't have any specific information on anything that was turned down at those rates. Typically those rates are adjusted or quoted based on some type of incentive from the government, from tax break or something like that. It's not a true gross amount of kilowatt hours. Typical kilowatt hours of solar is about twice that amount now. I favor market-based solar and renewables, basically, any type of renewables. which can include wind, but I strongly for market-based, not a subsidized, because we go into a subsidized situation now, it can change next year. And just like wind, in the past, my past jobs in the 1980s, I worked for a company that we built controls for wind generation. And during that time, even 40 years ago now, that was subsidized, and you still have subsidies. So wind cannot compete unless it's subsidized. So it goes, and every time the subsidies might go away, we have this fervor in Washington about reassigning the subsidies, and we've got to get rid of these subsidies. It's got to be market-based. Real quickly, my idea of market-based is go to true net metering. And this can be very technical, so I'm going to try to do it very quickly. But basically, a true net metering is it's a zeroing of kilowatt hours. So if you put in a solar array, it nets out. So if you end up being a gross producer, or you then become a net producer or a net user. So every kilowatt you produce cancels a kilowatt you use. And if you're a net producer, more than you use, then they buy it at wholesale. If you use more than you produce, then you buy it wholesale. But not what they do now with OPD, which doesn't give any incentives to anybody to really put solar in, especially the big people, the big companies that would gain good benefit.
Mr. Hughes, you are currently manager of operations at Virgin Valley Disposal and hold a degree in construction management. What specific skills and experience will you bring to the OPD board should you be elected?
Well, one is I think that, I also worked for Pulte Homes when they developed the Sun City area out there in land development. And was able to follow that from the design part all the way to the implementation of putting the utilities in the ground. Was able to work right alongside with Overton Power Engineering Department of location of transformers, power poles, things of that nature. So my construction background will definitely help me as far as the operations side of OPD goes, to be able to connect and see where some cost savings can be on the construction side, the maintenance side of it, and also in the management side of it, being able to be involved in running a successful business in the private sector. I'll be able to help pass on some of those policies and procedures that we currently have that allow us to operate under a set budget without having to raise rates on a continual basis. So I think those areas of my experience, even though being in construction and not directly related to the power industry, is still going to be able to help and be very beneficial as a board member. Number one thing is being able to interact with the public and being the public's representative, which I think has been a lacking issue with the current and past board members. So that's my biggest strong suit, I believe, is just my ability to interact with the public, to be open to suggestions and be able to take that to OPD's board meetings and also to staff to work so that we can improve OPD as a whole.
This is a continuation of the question that Dave Lawler just answered. I understand that OPD pays someone with solar panels. This is for you, Mr. Hurt. Solar panels much less for the excess energy they buy than they charge for the supplemental power that you use. First of all, is it true? And what changes would you suggest to the policy if elected to the board? Now, I know that that's a softball since you installed solar panels, but...
Well, that enables me to answer the question. It is true. So during the daytime, if I have excess power, OPD pays me wholesale. And at nighttime, when I use power from OPD, they pay me retail. And that's not true net metering, that's a buy-sell policy. It's costing me about $8 a month on my home array. It's not a really big deal. Other companies, I believe in Arizona now, if you have a home solar array, you pay $5 a month more in your base utility pay. So that's not too far off from this $8 that I'm sort of losing. I would look at, I favor doing everything to subsidize solar that is fair to the other ratepayers. So I would like to examine the true costs to OPD when people have solar compared to when they don't have solar, and determine if it's really costing OPD money because people have solar, and determine what the fair charging policy is. The other thing OPD has is a very high monthly fee. It's $25 a month. It's $10 a month in NV Energy, and they do true net metering. So all of these things have to be examined in the rate structure, just like the business rate structure should be examined. And then I believe OPD should help all ratepayers to minimize their bills consistent with fairness to other ratepayers.
Mrs. Bess, again, welcome to Mesquite.
Thank you.
You and your husband operate a restaurant, and I understand from people that have been there that it's a good restaurant. I'll have to get down there and try it one of these days. But other than that, you don't appear to have any formal education or experience in utility operations or engineering. Other than living in Overton for 24 years, what skills and experience do you think you bring to the OPD Board of Trustees?
My skills, I believe, are, how to explain this? I've been on our town board for 20 years. I've been on the MSHCP committee, which is your multi-species habitat, for 2 years. I've been on various planning groups where everybody doesn't get what they want. And as you can see by listening to all of us, we all have varied ideas of what should happen and what should be going on and what is going on. I've been able to arbitrate with people and work with people and come up with solutions for things where everybody's not always going to be happy. But it's just like when you go wind, solar. Everybody doesn't want wind, everybody doesn't want solar, but you find a place in the middle. And with the power district, I've noticed some uncomfortable situations, and I feel that I have a skill where I can help and bring people together and mediate these issues so that more things get accomplished in a positive way and not so many things being put on the shelf because everybody can't come together and decide what should be done. And I've run into it the same with my business. You do the same thing, and it's something that I've learned over the years. I've learned by going to county commission meetings for our town board. I learned the hard way by not getting some of the things that I wanted and walking out and crying because I didn't understand why they didn't see it my way. And I had some wonderful people that took me aside and said, just because it isn't your way doesn't mean it can't be done. You just have to find a way to work it out with those people.
Thank you. Now, if you figure, hello, there we go. If you figure that out and we get people who don't agree to come together, would you share that with our Congress, please?
Mr. Pugh, you're an incumbent on the board after having been appointed in 2013 to fill a vacancy. Now that you've had a year to get an insider's view of OPD, what specific ideas do you have for improving the operations? And what are you waiting for?
Okay, I have a whole list of things to improve, not really the operation, but the way things are managed in general. And I'll have to give credit for the list that I have that I'm going to use as my agenda to Barbara Ellisted, who brought them up in a town hall meeting in 2008. And I've actually taken that list and added to it to make it my list. What I'd like to do, one of the things, is to make most of the meetings in Mesquite. There's 15,000 customers in OPD, and the majority, 75%, are here in Mesquite. But the majority of the meetings are held in Overton. So I want to get it reversed so that we have 8 meetings here and 4 down there. There's also some issues with the pay for the board members and what they perform and what they do and what money they receive for it. But again, I'm only one of 7. I have to have a coalition that supports the agenda that I have to actually accomplish these items on my agenda. The other one is, and I mentioned it earlier, the outage we had was a result of us only having one supply to the OPD system. We have to get a redundant supply, so if we do lose that one supply, which may happen again in the future, we have a standby to keep the power on. And I reiterate with the board continuously that we need to move forward as quick as possible to get that redundant supply.
Mr. Young, we've had a few questions. You're going to get another one on solar power. I think a lot of people see that it has some real benefits, and of course the great benefit being, you know, it's expensive to put in, but then you don't have to buy any fuel. Southern Nevada is one of the prime locations in the country for radiance, and there are obviously some very big projects scattered around Southern Nevada. There's none in this area. I think that puzzles a lot of us, and so my question is, are you a supporter of solar power, and under what circumstances? And do you think Overton Power District has been aggressive enough in trying to attract a project here? Several of the projects doesn't mean we have to use the power. There's a lot of places that buy that power, but it sure would be nice to have the jobs and the construction.
Jobs and construction. That's an excellent result. And solar is great potential. I really admire those people who have put it on their homes and use the energy. Unfortunately, a lot of our ratepayers can't afford to do that. And so our job is to keep rates low as possible and provide good reliability. In fact, I'm surprised anybody objects to solar energy. It's as you say, no fuel needed. It's every day it comes. So I think we have to be a very good supporter, and a power district supporting solar helps the overall country move in that direction, which will be the future. And as Jim said, there are a number of new improvements coming in solar, which will improve the efficiency dramatically, and we need to be ready for that. I think Overton Power has pretty much sat by the sidelines on all these issues. And the reason, in my opinion, for that is the board has been not involved in seemingly much. One of the meetings I went to just a month or so ago, the main item on the agenda was who was going to attend the Rural Electrical Conference. What? You know, in Kansas City, and who was going to be a voting member or something like that. That's not what a board of directors should be doing. A board of directors should say, hey, we need to follow up on this. We need to work on getting a solar farm where people who have the money can buy into it and support solar energy. That's not happening. It just isn't. The board's job is to set the direction and make sure management follows it. And when a board meets for 30 minutes once a month or maybe 10 times a year, that's not much time to set direction. You need to work on things, and I think if we do, we can get somewhere in solar energy, and I support it.
Mr. Ballwig, as you're undoubtedly aware, OPD is not subject to the same open meeting laws as other public supported companies. They are subject to some, but not the same ones. And you have been obviously a very vocal critic of them being maybe less transparent than you would like. On the other hand, you were a director until a few months ago of MRBI that was ruled to be subject to the state's open meeting law, and that company has twisted itself into a pretzel to avoid citizen oversight. I guess my question is, why do you have these two very different perspectives on transparency, and which attitude regarding transparency can we expect to see if you're elected to the board of OPD?
Both entities are completely different. MRBI was a 501c6 private corporation set up to do a function. And to correct the record, and at this particular time it has been ruled by with additional information given to the Attorney General, and other some changes to contracts to clarify Attorney General. MRBI is no longer under scrutiny by the Attorney General for open meetings, and that has been lifted. That is officially lifted. So at that particular point, there was a process. And if you look at, and this can take a long time. I'm going to try to do this very quickly. But the city has been involved with this, and one of the big problems with MRBI, I don't want to get too much detail with this, but MRBI was put under a very difficult situation because it was private. There was some misinformation passed out. The Attorney General made a ruling, changed his mind. It's been changed, and we no longer do it. And there's actually, the city's taking action right now to try to come up with a new procedure in the legislature coming up to try to have an actual, some recourse when this kind of stuff happens. Now, if you look at real quickly at 318, which Overton Power is organized under, they do have taxing power that they don't initiate. Right now, the AG said, well, you know, there's a loophole because they don't levy taxes and don't use public taxes. But the fact is, they can levy taxes, and without the control of open meeting law, they could actually go into private meetings and actually put property taxes, put an assessment on your property that nobody's going to know about in a public meeting if they're not subject to open meeting laws.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes. Did we catch you asleep?
No, catch me away. Okay.
Mr. Hughes, you have a background in construction. And OPD does a lot of construction. They build a lot of their lines and their powers and a lot of reconstruction of repair. Is your construction background something that you think would be helpful to OPD in those situations, or is that not something that really fits in your background of experience?
Yeah, I think so, to a certain degree. I mean, the actual hands-on construction of it, not so much. But, you know, as I stated before, part of my job duties and descriptions when I worked for Pulte Homes in the land development was to create job scopes, to follow through with bid packets and bid information to get out to contractors to bid those. You know, one of those things that comes to mind is we're paying a lot of these guys a pretty decent salary for where we're comparing to other organizations that do a lot of this construction themselves. And a lot of times we will farm that out or sub that work out to be done outside, and I think that's one way where we can save some money is by using our own in-house employees to do a lot of that construction work. So to answer your question, you know, the hands-on electrical work that's going to be done, no, I can't go out there and wire up a substation for them. However, I think the general process of moving the construction procedures forward and doing it in a way that's efficient and of cost savings to the district, I believe I can.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think the job description of a trustee requires you to go out and wire up those panels.
Thank you.
But it would save some money, right, John?
It would.
Mr. Hurd, you have an impressive background and credentials in electrical engineering in your career at NASA. You have been attending OPD board meetings for a long time now. How do you think your technical knowledge can be used to benefit OPD?
Thank you. It's really not the electrical technical knowledge, it's the system engineering. System engineering is the discipline of determining the requirements, what the customer really needs, and eliminating the frills so that you only do what is really needed, and the discipline of making the detailed requirements so you can go out for bid on a contract or get what is really needed done at the lowest cost. It's also the engineering of reliability, so that you could, here we should go out in the system and find all the places in the system that could cause a long outage, such as the outage we have now. And we should say which ones could we fix and which ones we couldn't fix, how much it would cost to fix them, and do those kind of trade studies and do it in a systematic manner that comes to the right answer. It's a kind of a structured discipline. It's related to all the thought process. It's related to the thought process of going out and comparing the salaries to salaries other places. None of this is real rocket science. It's common logic, but you need to have the background to know what to do. And then, you know, with a little guidance, the staff can do all of these things. They know what to do.
Thank you. Judy, there is a perception among many in Mesquite, which has about 8% of the customers of OPD, that Mesquite is underrepresented on the board and in the employee base. Please explain why you think the voters in Mesquite should support you from Overton to represent them on the board.
Well, one of the reasons would be that this is seat 7, and it's the at-large seat, which means that you represent everybody in the district. You don't just represent Mesquite, you don't just represent Overton, you represent everybody in the district. When I look at this district, there's different needs in different areas, there's different perspectives that are taken. One of the reasons I think that I would be good for all areas is in the 24 years I've been living in Nevada, we've done a lot of business up here. I do business with businesses up here. My husband actually started with Chuck Hagelman, the Mesquite Men's Golf Association. We have golf tournaments up here all the time. We go to the hotels. We use the hotels. I worked with the Mesquite Resort Association when they were just starting the Mesquite Resort Association, because when I first came here there was the Palms, and that was it, which is why they started the golf club, because the Palms, everybody met there to play golf. I also, when they started looking to have a hospital here, I became involved with those people to try and bring a hospital here, and which was successful and is really nice, and has helped Mesquite grow, because a lot of the snowbirds and other people that are elderly didn't want to live here because there wasn't a hospital and they would have trouble getting their needs met. So I think that being able to represent the whole district is my cup of tea, because I've always represented all the areas. And the same with the MSHCP. We had to work with your group from Mesquite when they were applying for grants for the MSHCP also.
Well, Mr. Pugh, you're the only incumbent who chose to participate in this event. I hope that soon we teach the incumbent trustees of Overton Power District that they are going to have to actually earn their seats from now on. There's a public perception of OPD being a group of insiders that operates more like a club than a public utility. I don't consider you an insider. You've only been there a little while and you weren't born and raised here. But you've had a year and a half of experience inside the OPD board culture. Do you think that public perception is correct? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. I've actually had the same perception in my year and a half in the board. But again, I'm one of 7. Again, I have my agenda of things that I'd like to accomplish, but I can't do it by myself. So we have to get a coalition of a majority on the board that can agree with what the items are on my agenda, and I'm sure they will, to overcome that perception of what the public has for the board right now. And I'm hoping that the people that are elected will be in the same perspective as I am and want to get these items accomplished, and we will get them accomplished if that happens.
I'm a little discouraged that no one, when we're talking about solar power, has said anything about the Southern Paiute solar thing that they're building just 50 miles down the road. I would think that that would have been something that at least the Overton Power District would be interested in. And this actually, I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Young.
Can I just add to that, though, before we go to Mike?
Let me ask the question, and then it's, oh, I guess not. So, Mr. Young, you've referred to citizen comments as people taking pot shots. Do you support the right of citizens and the media to criticize government operations such as OPD?
I think citizens have the right to criticize any government operation. Government and a utility is part of government. ODP belongs to us. It is a quasi-government sort of organization. And the citizens have a right through public comment to come in and say what they think. But the board has a responsibility to listen. And in the times I have spoke and I've heard others speak, there's no listening. They're just waiting for their turn to talk, the board members. I think it's important that we listen to the public. It's interesting that I comment on potshots because I wrote an article in the local newspaper, and one of the public comments was very critical of me personally. Not what I subject, but personally. And I mentioned that, hey, just because I stood up and wanted to run for office, somebody takes a potshot at me personally. Hey, I don't think that's undue criticism on my part. I have a right to say as much as the public does, as you have, to go into any public government agency, utility, and have your right to say what you want. And I have my right to reply. Should be. I would hope that the Overton Power Board in the future listens to its customers. And regardless of having a future agenda, you've got to stand up for what's right now, even if you're the only one of 7 standing. You have to be able to say no. I'm standing for what I believe is right, not waiting until I get a lot more people on my side. And I intend to be able to stand up and do that.
Are we done?
That ends the questions with our OPD candidates.